Hi, this is Chris with Nightfall Audiobooks, and I have for you something a bit different today. Thrift Store Horror is my collaborator on the channel. I use them for resources on what to read next and how to get books that I'm missing. And in some cases, I'm tracking down the wrong book entirely because it's the UK release and I already have the United States release. Anyway, recommendation was 13 Tales of Horror by 13 Masters of Horror. This is a compilation novel. It's all short stories. I have not read this before, but it came highly recommended by Thrift Store Horror. So we have stories by R.L. Stine, Caroline B. Cooney, Christopher Pike, D.E. Atkins, A. Bates, J. Bennett, Carol Ellis, Diane Ho, Lael Littke, Sinclair Smith, J.B. Stamper, Ellen Emerson White, and Patricia Windsor. Half of these authors have worked with Scholastic and Point Horror in the past. This should be pretty fun. And we all know about R.L. Stine and Christopher Pike, right? Believe it or not, I haven't really read any Diane Ho, or Sinclair Smith, or Caroline B. Cooney, but I do have a Cooney novel in the works, so stay tuned for that. I will be reading one story from this compilation and then publishing that as its own episode. I'm going to use this book like glue. If there's any holes or gaps or weirdness going on in my schedule, I'll be using one of these stories to fill that void. Just something fun to do. So let's begin. If you would like to get in touch with me, you can write me an email, nightfallaudiobooks@gmail.com. I am also on YouTube at Nightfall Audiobooks. Feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the join button to show your support. I also have a Patreon page, patreon.com/nightfallaudiobooks. So tell your friends, tell your mom, tell whoever you think would like to listen to me narrate them a story. Thank you very much for listening, and let's begin. Welcome to a Nightfall Audiobooks production of Collect Call 2, The Black Walker, by Christopher Pike. It was almost a month after the death of Janice Adams that Caroline Spencer went out on a date with the mysterious and handsome Bobby Walker. The date was Caroline's first trip into the world since the horrible accident that had put her in the hospital. She was still not fully recovered. Headaches as violent as volcanoes frequently gripped her, and her supposedly mended ribs screamed every time she bent the wrong way. Yet when Bobby Walker called and asked if she wanted to go to the movies with him, even before she had returned to school, she said yes. Caroline disliked lying around the house, and Bobby was, of course, awfully cute. She thought it would be fun. Bobby picked her up in her '59 Chevy convertible, a car considerably older than Caroline herself, which nevertheless shone white and bright in the crisp autumn moonlight. Bobby wore blue jeans, a dark t-shirt, and his usual black leather jacket. He opened the car door for her as she came out of the house. Although he had not come to the door of the house to get her, simply pressing on his vintage horn to announce his arrival. Her parents had not approved. They liked to meet any guy she dated, but neither had followed her outside to interrogate Bobby, and Caroline was relieved. It would not have been the first time her parents had pulled such a stunt. "How are you doing, babe?" Bobby asked as he helped her into his vehicle. Even though it was a convertible, the rich smell of the leather seats filled the air. Caroline had only a light green windbreaker over her white blouse and slacks, and worried she would be cold. For an instant, she considered returning inside the house for a sweater, but a glance into Bobby's strong face made her change her mind. "Great," she said, climbing inside. "How about you?" "I've never looked better," he replied, as he returned to the driver's side. She thought she saw him grin at his own joke, but could not be sure. He stared at her as he settled beside her, his dark eyes penetrating, unblinking. "What do you want to do?" he asked. She giggled. She always giggled when she was nervous, and she was pretty much always nervous around people. She was head cheerleader, used to dancing and shouting in front of large audiences, but she was terribly insecure. "I'll do whatever you want to do," she said. Bobby Walker slowly smiled. It was a curious affair. His lips seemed to crawl off his beautiful teeth rather than simply move into an expression of pleasure. They crawled like something slimy in the night, and Caroline shivered involuntarily, for what she thought was no reason. "I like to see the dead come back to life," Bobby said. "I like to see the living lay down with the dead." Caroline missed a couple of beats. "Pardon?" Now his grin widened, sweet and fun-loving. "There's a horror movie at the theater called The Listeners. I want to see it." Caroline nodded. "That's good. Is it gory? I don't like gory stuff." Bobby stopped smiling. "Why not?" "It scares me." "Why does it scare you?" She shrugged. "It just does. I guess I'm a coward." "The movie's full of blood. It's about a lizard monster from the past who reincarnates in a twin's body and then begins to rip people apart." Bobby nodded. I've seen it twice already. Why do you want to see it again? He started the car. Because I like it. Okay, Caroline said without enthusiasm. There were few people at the theater. It was a Tuesday night, and apparently the movie had received poor reviews. Bobby did not have to go to the window to buy tickets. He had purchased them earlier, he explained. Caroline glanced over as he pulled a wad of them from his tight jean pocket. It looked as if he had bought tickets for tomorrow's show as well, and the next day's. Caroline had not eaten dinner and wanted popcorn and a drink. Bobby said fine, but did not offer to buy the refreshments. Feeling embarrassed, but also hungry, she got them herself, while Bobby stood nearby, staring blankly into the distance. Would you like some popcorn? She asked as they went into the theater, offering him her medium-sized tub, but he shook his head. No, thank you. You don't like butter on it? She asked. Actually, she did not like butter either, and had only asked for it because she thought Bobby would want it. She understood that most people did like butter. She was hoping to loosen Bobby up. He didn't seem to be enjoying himself. I never eat before midnight, he said. She laughed. You really are a horror movie fan? He looked over at her. He was taller than she remembered. You know it, babe. They watched the movie, and at first it was okay. But then a lizard monster from the past entered the body of the pretty red-haired twin, and she began to kill people and swallow people, and Caroline had to close her eyes. But now Bobby was having a great time. He laughed as if he were watching a comedy, slapping his knee whenever the victim screamed for mercy, and it made her wonder just a tiny bit if Bobby wasn't a little sick in the head. When the film was over and the lights had come on, Bobby glanced over at her. Did you like it? He asked. I told you I'm a chicken. I had my eyes closed half the time. Then we should watch it again. What? She said. Let's stay for the 10 o'clock show. Caroline cleared her throat. I'd rather not. I'm feeling a little tired. I'm still recovering from the accident. Bobby nodded. The accident is why you should watch it again. What do you mean? He turned away from her, staring once more at the screen. Keep your eyes open this time, and you'll see. But just do as I say. Caroline could hardly believe it, but they watched the entire movie again. They were the only ones left in the theater. This time she kept her eyes open at all the bloody parts. She had to. Whenever the monster was about to tear someone apart, Bobby would glance over to make sure she was taking it all in. And the look on his face. It was as if he would do something to her. She turned away. What that something was, she didn't know, but it scared her. She was definitely not having a good time. There was one part in particular in the movie that spooked her, a part she hadn't fully registered the first time. Before the evil lizard monster from the past genetically changed the twins, the two twin girls hypnotized each other, and led one another back into the past, through their childhood, and then back into other lives, into the ancient past, when monsters walked the earth. As Caroline watched, she felt herself slipping back in time also, not as far as another age, but back to the night of the accident. The impact of the crash had knocked her unconscious. Of that there was no doubt. Yet suddenly she could see how the interior of the car had looked immediately after the crash. The shattered glass, the crumpled metal, the blood, everywhere, hers as well as Janice's. But I was thrown from the car. Suddenly, Caroline could even remember how Janice had climbed out of the car, and then climbed back in and dragged her into the driver's seat. Yet she knew none of those things had happened. Janice had never left the car. Only the smoke from her burning ashes had escaped. I am not remembering. I'm dreaming. But she had this feeling that what was coming back to her was the truth, minus one big important element. What had happened before they had crashed? Something bad. Fun, huh? Bobby whispered in her ear as the cute red-haired lizard monster bent a young man's finger back too far. Snap, crackle, pop, and my, don't these taste good. The monster took off the guy's head next. Oh yeah? Caroline muttered, cringing. Finally, thankfully, the movie ended. Not many of the actors were left alive. Caroline practically jumped out of her seat with relief. She had a headache. Her ribs throbbed from sitting still for so long. She wanted to go home and go to bed. She wanted to get away from Bobby Walker. He might have been cute, but she was more convinced than ever that he had a screw loose. He practically licked his lips as they walked toward the exit. Did you like the part at the end when she squished the guy's skull as flat as a pancake? He asked. The special effects were amazing, she said. He stopped her, grabbing her arm, just as they stepped out into the deserted parking lot. How do you know it wasn't real? Bobby, do you even know what's real? It was just a stupid movie, for God's sake. She pulled her arm back. His grip had been unpleasantly strong. I don't know how you can enjoy crap like that anyway. His face darkened. What did you say? You heard what I said? She met his gaze, no small feat. He was incredibly handsome, but there was a cruelty in the lines of his face that she had found hard to believe she had not recognized before. His eyes blazed at her as if they wanted to burn her, the way Janice had burned. Yet just as soon as she saw the look in his eyes, it vanished, and he smiled sweetly. She wondered if she had seen it at all, if it was not simply something else she had imagined. Bobby spoke gently. I'm sorry, he said. To each his own. I guess I sometimes forget that. Hey, you haven't had much fun tonight. Let me make it up to you. Let me take you someplace special. She checked her watch. It was almost midnight. I don't know. It's late. The doctor says I still got to get plenty of rest. His face showed concern. The bang on the head still got you down. Yeah, a little. I get headaches. He nodded. I remember how you looked that morning in the hospital. Your face was 10 different colors. She smiled briefly, softening inside a little. A handsome face worked miracles on her. She may have been too quick to judge him so harshly. It was nice of you to wait all night at the hospital to see how I was, she said. Of course, he hadn't called her since that morning, except yesterday to ask her out. That's just the kind of guy I am, he said. Bobby, when I woke up in the hospital after the accident, there was a message on my machine from you. Do you remember leaving it? Sure do, babe. Did you leave the message before you heard about the accident or after? Hi, Carol. This is Bobby. Wanted to know if you loved the tape, if it did something for you. I'll see you soon, if you're still alive, that is. She hated being called Carol, or Babe for that matter. He was watching her closely. Before. Why? She thought for a moment. It's nothing. Where is it you want to go? He offered her his arm. You'll see when you get there, Carol. She hesitated, then took his arm. They drove out of Chester Rock into the surrounding country. The cold had deepened, and Caroline shivered in the front seat. But Bobby was not inclined to put up the roof, despite her repeated requests for him to do so. He laughed and said he liked his women cold. They parked a mile off the road behind a cluster of thick trees. Caroline looked around in the dark. Why are we here? She asked. Bobby jumped out of the car and opened the trunk. I have to show you what's real, he said. Caroline climbed out uneasily, clasping her arms close to her chest. I don't understand, she said. You will. She looked up at the tall trees. In the cold white light of the moon, they looked like silver sentinels standing guard at the edge of a forbidden land, and they looked so familiar. She had been to this spot before, not that long ago, only she could not remember. Where are we? She asked. Bobby shut the hood of the trunk and walked toward her. In his hands he carried a portable stereo and a shovel. Home, he said. A stab of fear shot through her, thin but sharp. I want to go home, she said suddenly. Bobby came closer. Didn't you hear me? You're already there. What are you doing with that shovel? He tossed it higher into his right hand, holding the flat of the metal above his head. Nothing, he said. Bobby? He moved to within arm's reach. She could feel his breath on her cheek, and it was like the light of the moon, cold and distant. What are you afraid of? He asked. She shook her head. I'm not afraid, I'm just tired. Take me back, please. His flesh looked so lifeless in the silver light. But we have to visit Janice. Janice? He cocked his head to the side and gestured with his shovel to the sky, the ground. His voice came out like a grumble in a deep well. She's here, right here. Caroline reached for the car door, opening it. Bobby, I'm serious. I want to go. Oh. He had slammed the car door shut with the heel of his boot, almost taking off her hand. You're coming with me. I'm serious. Caroline swallowed and nodded. She could see just how serious he was. For the first time, she wondered if he meant to harm her. Now she was afraid. Boy, was she afraid. They went through the thick bushes of the trees, with her walking in front. The way was dark, shot through with shafts of unholy white rays. She could feel the evilness of the place even before the trees thinned and the tombstones became visible. She recognized in an instant why the place had looked familiar. She had come here only a couple of weeks ago, with flowers in her hands. They had taken the back entrance into the cemetery when Janice had been buried. What is left of her was buried here, Bobby remarked, coming up to her side, reading her mind. He surveyed the cemetery for a moment before turning toward her, the blade of his shovel turning with his head. Do you know how long the car burnt before the police arrived, the firemen? Caroline shook her head. Bobby leaned close again to her ear, her hair. A long time, he said softly. She burned a long time. Caroline trembled. What do you want with me? Bobby took a sharp breath. Then he seemed to relax. He leaned back. He held up his stereo. I just want to play you a song." A tear rolled over Caroline's cheek. He was insane, and she was trapped in a cemetery late at night with him. "Then will you take me home?" she asked pitifully. He laughed softly. "Sure, babe." He led her out into the cemetery, where all the dead people were laid out in plots of grass and weeds, all except one. The lawn had yet to grow over Janice's remains, and perhaps for that reason Bobby had no trouble finding the gravesite. Yet Caroline suspected he knew exactly where it was, because he had been there many times before, as he had gone many times before to the same horror movie. "I bought fresh batteries for tonight," Bobby said, as he set the stereo on top of Janice's tombstone, a low, simple affair with only Janice's name and the years of her short life inscribed above the note. "Beloved daughter." "What's so special about tonight?" Caroline asked miserably. "It's a night of song," Bobby said. He turned on the tape player. "I come from the past. I eat the night. I knew you when you were young. I tell you my story, but I sleep with a gun. This is my night. This is your night. I'm a Black Walker, babe. Touch me softly, and you get a fright. There are holes in the sky. The moon is a thorn in the dark. It drips white light. Give me the knife. Let's cut out our eyes. Yeah, this is our night. This is what's right. I'm a Black Walker, babe. Brush my lips, and I bleed you white." Bobby turned off the tape and stared at her. He looked as real as the tombstone he stood beside, real as rock. "What do you think, babe?" "Oh, God," she whispered. Suddenly, she remembered new things, terrible things. The song in a car, the eerie rhythms, the argument on the dark road, the two of them fighting over who was going to get Mr. Bobby Walker. Then the slap in the face. She had hit Janice in the face. She had made Janice drive off the road. Bobby took a step toward her, carrying his shovel. "I didn't quite catch that," he said. Caroline just looked at him. "You know?" she whispered. He grinned, a red mouth full of white teeth. "I know many things." "I killed Janice?" He nodded. "You did what the Black Walker told you to do." "Who is the Black Walker?" "Who am I?" "Bobby Walker?" She nodded. "I knew it all along?" He raised a surprised eyebrow. "Had you known, you wouldn't have come here, but that's beside the point. What should we do with you, now that we know you killed a girl?" Caroline stood perfectly still, although her eyes darted to the right and left, trying to find the best direction to run. He intended to kill her, she could see that now. He thought he was the Black Walker after all. Why was it that the cutest guys always turned out to be the psychopaths? "I think we should go to the police," she said. That made him laugh. "I think we should go to Janice." She began to cry again, to shake. "I don't understand." Bobby caressed the shaft of the shovel. "You and Janice have to get together, talk out your problems." Caroline glanced at the gravesite, the unsettled mud. He had brought a shovel. The ground was still loose. It would be easy to dig up. It was as if she could read his mind. Her and Janice together, under the ground. "You're a monster," she swore. And with that, she turned and ran, but she was only a cheerleader, still recovering from a serious accident. She leapt over one grave, 2 plots. The moist grass slipped beneath her sneakers. She did not get far. A cruel metal hand struck her on the back of her head. She went down into the grass, sprawling in the dark. The white light of the moon turned an ugly shade of red, and the grim row of tombstones twisted into dwarfish green gremlins, laughing at her. Rough hands grabbed her from behind, and pain shot from the base of her skull into her guts. Bobby dragged her to her feet by her hair. "You have to stay," he said, breathing into her face as he pulled her back toward Janice's grave. "It's after midnight. The Black Walker wants to meet you." Caroline was too dazed to fight back. Blood seeped down the back of her neck, soaking her blouse. The cemetery continued to dance as her eyes went in and out of focus. He threw her against a tree, and then grabbed her once more as she toppled to the side of the gnarled trunk. From his pocket he drew forth a thin length of black rope. Her arms were yanked behind her back. Another wave of pain shot through her body. He began to tie her to the tree, talking all the while. "I'm glad the Black Walker gets the two of you," he said. "Two such pretty things. He will be pleased, and when he's pleased, I'm pleased." Bobby paused in his knot, trying to press his mouth against her cheek. His teeth scratched across her soft flesh. "You don't know how close we are, babe." Caroline coughed, fighting to remain conscious. Her brain felt as if it had been immersed in acid. "But I thought you were the same," she gasped. Bobby took a step back and let out a cruel laugh, just like a demon, a walker of the black path. His face was suddenly animated with a life from another world. His limbs twitched with strings pulled out of another dimension. He began to circle the tree restlessly. Caroline's head cleared somewhat. She strained against her binds. The twine cut into her wrists. She was trapped. "We are the same as our reflections," he said. "When he looked out of the void, he asked me to be his mirror. He told me to turn off the light and let his music come into the place of the dead. Then he sang to me and let me use his voice. You see how beautifully we get along." "I don't know what you're talking about," Caroline said. Not that she wanted to know. Struggling with her binds was not helping. She went limp, trying to relax, to think. Bobby continued to rave. "You can tape the voices of the dead," he said gleefully. "I read about it in a magazine. You put a microphone in a deserted place. You put in a blank tape and push the record button. You catch the sounds of the wind, the distant train, but you also catch their whispers." He spoke softly to me, and I listened. I recorded his song. Caroline frowned, curious in spite of herself. "Are you serious?" Bobby stopped in front of her. "It can be done. I did it. I contacted the dead. I got the master who walks past the lines of dead. He chose me. He gave me his song. He gave me his power." "And what power is that?" He threw back his head and cackled again. He was really losing it. "I have the power to make nightmares come alive. Janice found that out. She spent the whole night in a dream. She didn't even know she was dead." "Janice died in a car crash?" "She died because the Black Walker wanted her. He wants you, and that's why you're going to die. I bring him pretty girls, and he brings me the Song of Power." "What power?" Caroline asked again. She was beginning to think she understood. Bobby Walker was possessed by the Black Walker. "I'll show you. Listen, and you will feel it." Bobby hurried over to Janice's tombstone, 15 feet away, and returned with the stereo. He began to rewind the tape. He was beside himself with excitement, panting like a dog in the midst of a rabid frenzy, his cold breath a gray smoke before his insane face. He set the stereo in the grass at her feet. "You listen while I dig," he said, reaching for the play button. "What are you digging?" she shrieked, her worst fear confirmed. Bobby took back his hand and stood and grabbed the sides of her head. He kissed her hard on the lips. His touch was like sharp ice, and she tasted blood inside her mouth. "She burned for so long, God knows there'll be room for you in the box," he told her, as he let go, making it sound like a promise. Tears poured over Caroline's face. Blood poured down her neck, but she managed to spit in his face. "You will not get away with this," she swore. He wiped off the spit as if he were sorry to see it go. He grinned again wickedly. "I've gotten away with it in a dozen towns," he said. "You're only one of many, and there will be many to come." He leaned over and pressed a button on the player. "Enjoy the music, Carol." "I come from the past. I eat the night. I knew you when you were young. I tell you my story, but I sleep with a gun." Bobby returned to Janice's grave and began to dig. He was strong. The damp earth flew over his head and landed in a steadily expanding pile at his back. But it seemed he preferred to work to the music of his god, and he kept returning again and again to the ghetto blaster to rewind the tape. There appeared to be only one copy of the song on the cassette. When the music finished, there would be nothing but an eerie hiss, the sound of a lost wind blowing over a forsaken land, the Black Walker's land. If only Janice and she had not turned off the tape so quickly in the car the night of the party, then they would have known the present had been no normal gift from the record store. Yet Bobby would sometimes allow a minute to go by before resetting the tape, sometimes two. In fact, the deeper he dug, the more the possibility of reaching Janice's coffin took priority over the tape. "I can hardly wait to open the box," he called to her, already hip-deep in the ground. "Damn you," Caroline whispered. The power of the song was lost on her. It only worsened her already throbbing head. She was no clever heroine. She had never been good at extricating herself from problems at school. She was a wimp, she thought, a flake. How was she supposed to outwit an experienced psycho? She struggled fiercely with the binds on her wrists, cutting herself worse. Bobby ran over, shovel in hand, to rewind the tape. He was covered with mud. "I love the full moon," he breathed. "It brings out the best in me." "My parents will have called the police by now," she cried. "They'll catch you. They'll put you in jail." Bobby shook his shovel before him as if it were a spear of power. "I'll be long gone by sunlight, and you'll be buried so deep even the memory of you will fade," he laughed. "Then it will be another school, another pretty thing. The Black Walker will walk across the country." He reached down and pressed the play button. Why don't you sing along, Carol? He suggested. It's Caroline, she said bitterly. The bitterness helped. It made her cry less and think more. Still, no good ideas came to her. She was alone in a cemetery, tied to a tree beside an opening grave. There were not a lot of options. Bobby continued to dig. He was getting down there. He shouted over to her that he would be hitting home any second. He let the song run out and did not return to rewind it. The hiss sung in Caroline's ears, hypnotic in its horrible loneliness. Then she heard the faintest of sighs, or thought she did. A word spoken in a lost wave of dry dust. Record. Hello? Caroline said quietly. Is someone there? Hello? The hiss continued to blow. Then another sigh, a whisper from unseen lips. Record. Followed by a longer stretch of emptiness. Then another word, slightly louder. Button. Spoken with a female ring to it. Jesus, Caroline moaned. Hi, Caroline, this is Janice. You called me, so I'm calling you. But don't try calling me back. I can't answer the phone. The fire burned off my hands, but don't worry. I'll be in touch soon. It sounded like Janice, but Janice was dead. Then again, if she believed Bobby, so was the Black Walker. Record button. Bobby and his goddamn song of power. How many copies did he have? Looks like maybe only one. It was a chance. I'm there, Bobby howled from deep in his hole. Can't wait to see how she smells. You're going to smell the same way. Quickly, Caroline worked her tennis sneakers and socks off and reached out with her feet for the stereo. It was just out of her reach, but by sliding her bent arms down the trunk of the tree, she was able to stretch out and snatch it between her big toes. She pulled the player close and stood back up. The buttons were big, well lit up by the light of the moon. She pushed the stop button, followed by the rewind button. The tape spun its ugly thread once more. Just got to get the dirt out of the way, and then we can see how Janice is doing, Bobby called. The tape stopped. Caroline pressed the stop button once more, then her big toe reached for record. It was harder to push down than the others, but go down it did. Now the speakers of the stereo were listening, not talking. They were on the microphone now, hungry perhaps, for once, for the voice of the living instead of the dead. Softly, so that Bobby could not hear, Caroline began to sing. Silent night, holy night, all is calm, all is bright, round yon virgin mother and child, holy infant so tender and mild. Sleep in heavenly peace, sleep in heavenly peace. Silent night, holy night, all is calm, all is bright. Caroline did not know all the verses. She just kept singing the same one. A few minutes passed. Bobby stood up in the grave, probably on top of the exposed coffin. He shook his head as if shaking off a hangover. He looked over at her. What are you singing? He growled. Prayers, she said, shutting up. She had sung Silent Night 5 times, enough times to wipe out the Black Walker tune. Bobby climbed slowly out of the hole with effort. Caroline reached down and clicked off the record button. Bobby walked wearily toward her. He had been digging hard, of course, yet his sudden fatigue struck her as a favorable sign. The lines on his face sagged as he stood before her. How come the tape is off? He demanded. Caroline shrugged as best as she could with her arms tied behind her back around a tree. It just ran out? Bobby knelt beside the stereo. But it shouldn't have gone off. He noticed her bare feet. You turned it off. I am very sorry, she said sarcastically. He stood back up and slapped her across the face. The blow made her cringe, yet he did not hit her hard. Not really. Shut up, he said. I'm putting you in the hole now. I don't want any trouble. Sure, why would I want to give you trouble? She said, sounding more like Janice than herself. She watched as Bobby leaned over once more and rewound the tape. He did not start the song again, however, not immediately. He stepped to the back of the tree instead and undid her binds, clasping her right wrist as he did so, in case she should suddenly bolt when she was loose. He still felt strong enough, certainly stronger than herself. The binds fell away, and the blood rushed back into her aching arms. Bobby grabbed her tightly and pulled her off the tree. Then he reached down with his free hand and turned the tape back on. Because there was normally a few seconds delay before the song came on, he noticed nothing amiss. His mood had changed for the worse. You're a bitch, you know that, he said. And you're a fine, upstanding young man? He slapped her again and began to drag her toward the hole. I'm going to enjoy throwing the dirt back on top of you, he said. It's you that's going in the hole, she screamed at him, fighting him all the way to the grave, but she could not get free. He hauled her to the edge of the pit before he threw her down into the pile of mud at the edge of the grave. It was his turn to spit on her and kick her in the gut. The wind went out of her in a hot red gasp. She doubled up in pain, rolling on the ground. He still had the edge on her in muscle, his erased power tape notwithstanding. She noted out of the corner of her eye that Janice had been buried in a pink coffin. He had yet to open the box, thankfully. I don't want to hurt you too bad before I put you inside, he said, his face savage. He reached for his shovel. I like to hear a girl kick as the mud settles on top of her. Caroline crawled onto her knees, gasping for air. I'm sure you'll have fun burying me to the new song I recorded for you. Bobby froze. What new song? Caroline smiled. Listen. From the direction of the tree, the gentle strands of Silent Night wafted toward the grave. I've been taking singing lessons since I was a little girl, she said. I hope you like it. Bobby dropped his shovel and screamed. Then he swore at her, his face contorted into a thing that might have been dead 1,000 centuries. You. Caroline clapped her hands together. That's me? Bobby whirled and ran toward the tape. Caroline jumped to her feet, picked up the dropped shovel, and ran after him. He was down on his knees beside the stereo when she came up at his back. She had slowed down by then. The monster had been transformed into a mouse. Silent Night was the only thing playing, and that made Bobby Walker very sad. He actually turned to her with tears in his eyes. I never even got to hear it on MTV, he complained. I thought the Black Walker didn't prostitute himself, Caroline said. Then she belted him in the face with the shovel, the edge of the blade catching him clean on the lovely line of his handsome jaw. A fat line of blood split his expression in two, and he went down. She raised his shovel again and brought it down hard on the back of his skull. He let out a muffled grunt and went still. Neither of you is ever going to be on TV, she assured him. There was only one thing left to do, and then she could go home. She dragged Bobby to the edge of the open grave and jumped down beside Janice's closed coffin. She closed her eyes, her nose, and tried to close her mind as she reached down to pull away the lid. It came up easily in her hands. She suspected Bobby had already loosened it. Yet no foul smell assailed her, and as she cracked open one eye, no gruesome remains jumped out to grab her. Janice's parents had had their daughter cremated. A small porcelain urn containing the ashes was all that rested in the center of the casket. Caroline sighed with relief. She leaned over and placed the urn in a corner of the coffin, and then reached up for Bobby's hand. It was cold, limp. She had hit him hard. He toppled into the coffin without a sound of complaint. She reached into his pocket and removed his car keys. She reclosed the lid of the coffin and climbed out. She had to walk back to the tree for the shovel. Then she rewound the tape of her song and pushed the play button. She thought the music would help her finish her job quicker. When 3 feet of the mud had been piled back on top of the coffin and the grave was half full, she heard Bobby start to kick. Cheerleading had not prepared her for such things. It was hard on her nerves to listen. Quickly, she turned up the volume on the tape, hoping to drown out his growing screams. And suddenly, miraculously, the music sounded fuller, richer, as if another voice had joined hers, singing about the bright angels rather than the Black Walkers. It almost sounded as if Janice were singing beside her. After a while the hole was full, and the kicking and the screaming stopped. Caroline brushed herself off, left the cemetery, and drove to within 3 blocks of her house. Then she parked the car and walked home. She heard no more from the handsome Bobby Walker. This has been a Nightfall Audiobooks production of Collect Call Part 2, The Black Walker, by Christopher Pike. Hi, this is Chris with Nightfall Audiobooks, and thank you very much for joining me for my production of Collect Call Part 2, The Black Walker, by Christopher Pike. So it seems as if Bobby Walker went into the woods with a voice recorder, and he captured some EVPs, or electronic voice phenomenon. This is common in ghost hunting. The idea is to take a microphone and a recorder with you through a haunted house and to ask the room questions, and then you wait. So you'll ask a question and then wait like 20 seconds or so, and then ask another question. And the idea is that during that 20-second wait, the ghost or the spirit or whatever it is will respond to you, but you can't hear it, so you use the recorder to capture the response. So it seemed as if Bobby Walker did this in the woods. Something else answered, and that was the Black Walker, and it gave him lyrics to a song, which was its power song, playing that song allowed the Black Walker to possess Bobby Walker, and then he went around the country killing people. That's nuts. The ending there was really fun. I liked that Caroline was able to overwrite the Black Walker's tape and play her own tape while she buried Bobby Walker. It sounded as if Janice were alive and singing with her. If you've read the R.L. Stine series The Cheerleader, you wonder why Sarah Fear is stuck in her grave. You were wondering what was in her grave when it escaped. Is it really Sarah Fear, or is it something else entirely? And this right here, this story, is something else entirely. This is a cheerleader of all things, burying someone who was possessed by a demon. Can you imagine if that thing ever got loose? What would it look like? What would it be? Remember, I said that Christopher Pike doesn't give you a horror story. He gives you a terror story. And the idea of whatever it is that is now inside Janice's coffin is terrifying. I hope you enjoyed this story as much as I did. It was a lot of fun seeing Christopher Pike play in the short story format. I had a really good time reading this series, and I hope you had as much fun listening to it as I did recording it. So what should I read next? I don't know. Send me an email, nightfallaudiobooks@gmail.com. I'm also at home right here on YouTube at Nightfall Audiobooks. Feel free to like, comment, and subscribe, and hit that join button to show your support. Any help is greatly appreciated. I really, truly do mean that. I also have a Patreon page, patreon.com/nightfallaudiobooks. So tell your friends, tell your mom, tell whoever you think would like to listen to me tell them tales of horror and sometimes of terror. Thank you very much for listening, and I will see you next time.